Let me share my screen here. Get my presentation up. Slideshow. Looks good?
Looks good.
Great. Well, hello, all you Master Gardener volunteers, and welcome to the Lunch and Learn. I miss seeing you guys in person and everybody bringing in plants to trade and get some new garden goodies. But, you know, this is the best we can do right now. So today I will be presenting to you on seed saving for your garden. And I'll mostly be talking about vegetable crops today, but I seed save all year round from herb plants like basil, dill, also wildflowers, the native wildflowers that we're growing in the flower trial at the exploration gardens, and just normal ornamental flowers like zinnias and cosmos and marigolds. Those are all extremely easy to save seeds. So this is a fundamental skill that you should have as a horticulturalist, and I'll kind of walk you through how to do it today. So just a quick outline for today. We're going to look at types of seeds, the seed saving process, wet versus dry seeds, self-pollinated versus cross-pollinated, and also storing seeds. So there's kind of a lot of terminology I'll be walking you through. So benefits of saving seeds. There are many benefits. It's something that every gardener should do. And this is talking specifically about heirloom seeds that you can keep saving from generation to generation, and you'll have, you know, a similar plant. So one is the diversity, and this is one of the biggest reasons why we should save our seed, because of the genetic diversity and just our food security, having that diversity of our seed source and having control over it. Also adaptation. If you grow the same plant in Florida over time, then it will allow the plants to adapt to your climatic conditions and become better suited for Florida. Even if you go to buy like a butterfly milkweed seed online, you should be looking that it's like a Florida ecotype. That means adapted for Florida versus one of the same species coming from, you know, up north or California. Also preservation, carrying the history of farming in these seeds. So, you know, did you ever get a seed from your grandmother or your parents? And can you pass that on to your kids? Some of the stuff that we grew on my grandma's farm, like the California Wonder pepper, is still a tried and true, you know, variety of pepper we can be growing today. Number 4 is health, which kind of is like food security, but you know, growing healthy vegetables and giving us more self-reliance, being able to grow our own seed. If we did have a crisis and you had all these seeds and you knew how to grow plants and save seeds, because like we experienced earlier this year, there was a seed shortage. Like Johnny seed, they were not selling, they were completely out, and other seed vendors too. And lastly, number 5, it's just free and fun. Like I enjoy doing it. It's fun to get the seeds out of the papaya and smush them out on the paper and then grow the plants, and then you have like 50 plants and you can give them away to all your master gardener friends and your neighbors, and you could give some to me or give them out for Christmas presents. So what's the difference between heirloom seed, hybrids, and GMOs? So this is the first question you need to be asking when you're saving seed. The heirloom, there's many names for this: traditional, open pollinated seed. Heirloom kind of technically means that they are type of like antique seed, like they've been around for many, many generations, but open pollinated might be the more technically correct type of seed for just something that grows true to the parent. So if you look like at the diagram here, what is heirloom? So plant A, you can save the seeds from that and it will make plant B, the offspring, which have similar characteristics to the parents. And then you can save the seeds from that and plant again. And plant C will look very similar too, and will have similar properties, similar fruits. So it's kind of growing like the same plant over and over. Now, note that this is different than cuttings because the seeds will be genetically different, even though they are, have produced offspring with similar characteristics. But cuttings, on the other hand, are genetically identical. So you won't have that genetic diversity, even though you can have similar plant by making cuttings. So that's why seeds are sometimes better than cuttings, to have that genetic diversity in there inherently. Here's some examples of some heirloom tomatoes or open pollinated tomatoes. And I kind of use those words interchangeably, but there are about 15,000 known varieties of tomato. And how many do you see in the grocery store? Not many. And how many of those can you save the seeds from? Well, only the open pollinated or heirloom ones. So saving seeds and cultivating some of these lesser known varieties just gives us awesome, palette of tomato fruits to choose from. And by growing all of these, we can find out, well, which ones are good for Florida, which ones are good to grow, in the fall, or which ones are more heat tolerant for the summer. You may have heard of the Everglades tomato, which is a little cherry tomato and known for being productive and low maintenance, easy to grow in Florida summers. That's an example of a heirloom tomato. Beans are another huge, variety, 40,000 varieties of beans that the World Gene Bank holds. And the gene banks, they keep all these seeds secure, and then they have to regrow them, every 3 to 5, 10 years, depending on their funding and resources, because seeds don't live forever and they need to be regrown and then save the seed and then hold on to that newer, fresher seed. So just amazing amount of variety out there we can be cultivating and saving and trading with our friends and keeping for our food security and our food supply. Another note about heirloom seeds. So sometimes they have evolved and bred over time. So this is something people get confused about. Sweet corn, for example, came from the Mexican farmers, over thousands and thousands of years. It started out as a grass, which was called teosinte, that you see here on the left hand side, and it was just a very, small grass. So over natural selection, so they just picked out, okay, which ones have the largest kernels. Then they picked out the largest kernels, generation after generation after generation, and they were able to naturally breed this sweet corn to have large, sweet, juicy kernels like we have today. So that's something to know, that over time through selection, also all heirloom, passing on generation to generation, you can make a better vegetable that way. Here's another example of evolution. And so we have the wild mustard plant. And from this species, Brassica oleracea, then we have 6 vegetables that are the same plant, the same species. And that includes kale, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, and kohlrabi. And these are all bred from this wild mustard plant, just selecting for Like kale is selecting for the leaves, cabbage is selecting for the terminal leaf bud, the Brussels sprouts are selected for the lateral leaf buds, and so on. So that's another example of how we can, naturally select plant traits and still save the seeds, but make new and improved plants out of them. You can do this too. You see, like the purple cauliflower. So that was a natural selection. At one point, somebody saw a purple mutant, and they're like, "Oh, that's cool. Let's save the seeds from that and, select it down." So next we're going to talk about a different category of seeds, which are hybrid seeds. So hybrid is still natural and it can be, done by hand. You can do this at home. So the hybrid seed is produced by cross-pollinating plants, and this is done to introduce a desirable plant trait to the offspring. Like the seed will now have a new trait. So the hybrid seeds, though, are not stable, so it's generally not recommended to save seed from the hybrids because the seed from the hybrid plants will not be the same as the parent, although they still can grow. I'll give you a couple examples. So like citrus, the Honeybell Tangelo is a hybrid, and it was created from a grapefruit and a Dancy tangerine. So it has some characteristics of both ones, but if you save the seeds from a honeybell, it's not going to give you another honeybell. It maybe give you a grapefruit or a tangerine. It might kind of revert back to the parents. Here's another example for a tomato. And so here on the left, we have a heat tolerant, not flavorful tomato that we're crossing with a not heat tolerant, flavorful tomato. So this gives you an idea of some of the characteristics that we want to breed for. What we're aiming for is to get a heat tolerant and flavorful tomato. And this research is still going on. Some of you might have seen an article by Dr. Sam Hutton recently talking about the tomatoes that they're breeding through the University of Florida. They are still working on this issue. How do we get a flavorful tomato, that can ship, that's heat tolerant, that grows well in Florida? And so you're crossing these two to get the ultimate result of the heat tolerant and flavorful tomato. But remember, if you save the seeds now from that cross, then they may not be another heat tolerant and flavorful tomato. They might revert back to one of the parents. So I hope that gives you a good idea of hybrid seeds. We're going to talk briefly now about the next category of seeds, which is the genetically modified seeds, or GMO seeds. And so this is not natural, but this is when the seed or the parent material was modified by man in a laboratory. And so they're also called GM, genetically modified, GE, genetically engineered, transgenic crops, biotech crops, biotechnology. And so why GMO? Well, there's a couple good reasons why GMO. The resistance to insects or diseases. You can have, say a pepper plant that's constantly getting a disease in Florida. Well, you could improve it by inserting that gene with the pepper disease resistance. Also tolerance to herbicide. The farmers can spray Roundup on the corn and not kill the corn. That makes their farming more efficient in some ways. Also tolerance for heat, cold, or drought. Improved crop yield is another thing. One thing I forgot to mention about hybrids is there's something called hybrid vigor. And sometimes when you cross the two plants, the new hybrid plant will be, extra big or extra tasty or doing really well. But then again, if you save the seeds, it might revert. So, but it's okay to do hybrids, and GMOs have their place too. But as you're saving seed, you do not want to save seed from GMO. First of all, it may be illegal. Many of these GMO crops are from large corporations that have patents, and so it's illegal, or you have to pay them for the seed that you save or get a permit to do it. So don't save seeds from GMOs. Um, so a lot of people worry about GMO plants, which ones are GMO, which ones are not. And this is a pretty recent list here. The GMO apple was the latest and greatest crop added to the GMO list. And the apple was bred, modified, genetically modified. That way, when you cut it into apple slices, they don't turn brown. And so if you go to the grocery store, I'm not sure how commercially available they are, but there'll be apple slices in a bag that don't turn brown. And that could be the new GMO apple. I think the variety is called like Glacier Ice or something like that. But here's some crops that are commonly GMO, and we're looking at corn, soybeans, cotton. These are the three biggest ones, but also sugar beets, canola for canola oil, potatoes, the papaya. They say the GMO papaya saved the whole papaya industry in Hawaii. So there are pros and cons of GMO, and we're not really going to talk about that today. But let me just review the hybrid versus the GMO. So in hybrid, it is a natural cross, or it can be, done by a human by hand, where you have the parent 1 times the parent 2, and you get the hybrid. Okay, but the GMO, this cannot be done, by hand pollination. It has to be done in a laboratory, and they use this agrobacteria to help transform in like a little gene gun. So here they're inserting a gene through a man-made process in a laboratory into a different plant to make the GMO the new plant, whereas the hybrid is a plant times a plant. So I just wanted to put that slide in to make that a little bit more clear for you. A lot of people get confused about that. And just one more slide about GMO here. This is just how the process works in case you're curious. So you start with the bacterium and the DNA, and you select out in this case, the insect resistant gene. And then you copy that in the bacteria, and then you put it into the gene gun, and then release the particles into like a little petri dish, and then you propagate that until the little plants start growing, and then you can have new plants that you can further propagate after that. But now we're just going to get into saving seed. So there's many levels to this. This is more of a seed saving for beginners class, and the 3 easiest seeds to save are bean and pea, which are in the legume family, lettuce, and also tomato. And so why are these the easiest to save? It's because they are self-pollinating and are likely to be true to the parent without much protective measures, which we'll talk about that later. So self-pollinating means that the flowers on the plant pollinate themselves, whereas some other plants require cross-pollinating. And this is where plants need other plants to pollinate each other. They're cross-pollinating between plants. And that happens through wind, insects, or humans can help with that sometimes. So there's some seeds that are easy to save and some that are just nearly impossible to save. Some of the easy ones include beans, radishes, cucumbers, squash, broccoli, tomato, pepper, and many flowers. But those just naturally go to seed here in Florida within 1 season. But think about saving seed from a cabbage plant, for example. Cabbage is actually a biennial, and it takes 2 years for it to produce seed. So since it's probably not going to live in Florida for 2 years, what you might have to do is like dig up the cabbage head, put it in your refrigerator over some period of time, and then bring it back out and then let it seed the next year. So it's just not practical. Like carrots, for example, same thing. They take 2 years to produce seed. Nobody's going to leave their carrot plant in the ground for 2 years. It probably won't survive anyway through the summers here. So just don't waste your time trying to save seed. If your carrot plant does seed for some reason, then that would be cool to try to save seeds from it. But usually it does not. Same thing with like collards and kale. They just don't really go to seed and flower here in Florida. So don't think about saving those seeds. So here's the technique, how you do it for beans. We'll go through a couple crops here. So beans are the easiest. These are my nephew's hands. So he came over to my house one day and I taught him how to do it. Kids love to do it. What you do is you want to let the pods dry out on the plant. This is a black-eyed pea. And this, see how the seed pod is nice and brown and dry and crusty. And so pick the dry pods from the plants, maybe let it dry in your house a couple more days, open them up to get the seeds out. See the red arrow, pick out any bad seeds that look kind of rotten or damaged. Actually, this one may have a little insect hole in it too. And then maybe dry them out in a container, just in the open air for a couple more days, and then put them in a little baggie and label and store them in a cool, dark place. Keep it away from sunlight, and it likes kind of low humidity, just kind of like normal houses here. Not too hot, not too cold. You don't really need to keep them in the refrigerator unless you're storing them for a long time. So some general guidelines about saving seed is that you want to choose healthy plants. Like don't choose all your most diseased plants to save the seed from, because some of that disease might end up on your seeds. And don't wait till the end of the season. If you're selecting for the latest, bean seeds, then you might be, having the later season beans next year. You might want to select some of the earliest bean seeds that come off and tag that to save the seeds from. And let the plants flower and seed, like lettuce. Lettuce is very easy to save seed from, but a lot of people, as soon as it goes to bolt, they just cut it off and throw it away. But you could actually let that grow and save the seed. And save the seed from several plants. That way you have good genetic diversity. In a small garden, maybe 10 plants, but in a large commercial operation, you want to probably save the seeds from at least 100 plants. But that also varies by plant species. It's a little bit technical. And then plant it again in your garden. Sometimes you can just directly reseed it in the garden, like pollinator plants. I'll just crush up the seeds while I'm walking around. Other seeds I might save and store them until it's the proper planting time next year, like Seminole pumpkin. So next we're going to talk about lettuce. Lettuce is another easy one. And lettuce seeds, they just grow the little head and then they bolt. One thing about lettuce is that they ripen unevenly. And so in this picture, you'll see the bags over the lettuce heads. So every day, a couple more lettuce seeds will open and ripen. But if you put a bag over it, it can be a paper bag, and just tie it with a little string. So you can let the bag hold the seeds, otherwise they'll fly away. And then at some point when you think most of them are ripe enough, you can cut the plant and dry out the seed head. So then once you dry it out, you kind of have to shake it a little bit to get the seeds off of the plant, and then blow away any of the chaff or kind of like duffy stuff. And that way you just have the pure seed. So here's some more examples of some dry seeds that just naturally dry on the plant. Herbs such as basil, dill, cilantro, fennel, Those are all extremely easy. Things in the aster family, lettuce, sunflower, marigolds, the hibiscus family, like the okra, the roselle, or the edible hibiscus. Beans and peas, very easy. Sweet peas, like this winter peas, pigeon peas, for if you growing the bigger bush of the pigeon pea. Brassicas are easy if they actually make seeds. So broccoli, bok choy, radish, mustard, they all bolt pretty readily to make all those little packets of seeds. And then onions, chives, like rain lily for ornamentals, those all are dry seeds that are easy to collect. You just have to get them at the right time and dry them out a little bit more, and you're good to go. Here's some examples of the dry seeds. So here's the rain lily seeds that are being collected here. And then this is okra on the bottom left. The okra just kind of pulls apart, and the seeds are nice and large and round, easy to take out. And then on the photo on the right, this is a broccoli that's flowering. And so once they make the little capsules with the seeds, then they dry out, then they're ready to harvest. So next I'm going to talk about wet seeds. So tomato, remember, is often self-pollinated. And so you can just have like one plant and save the seeds off of it. But this is different because it's a wet seed saving method. So in this case, what you want to do is you want to cut the fruit, you want to squeeze out the seeds and the juices, and then you want to let that ferment in a couple, like for a couple days, like in a little glass jar. That's how I do mine, or like in a little Tupperware container. And you could just put a little paper towel or cloth with a rubber band on the top. That way, like bugs or anything doesn't get into it. And then you just let it sit for a couple days. Just stir it, maybe once a day, once or twice a day, and you will see the seeds. They will fall to the bottom, and all the pulpy stuff will be left on the top. So here's an example of it in the jar. And so what you're trying to do here is break the jelly seed coating away from the actual seed. And so you can do that by hand by pushing it against a piece of paper, but you can do it using the ferment process too, where it will naturally just fall off after a couple days. So once the seeds settle to the bottom of the jar, then you can dump off the liquid on the top and the pulp, and the bad seeds also float, like if they're underripe or something. And you can kind of do this a couple times, like first dump, fill it back up with water, stir it up a little bit more, dump it out again. And that's the process. You can clean the seeds, seed cleaning. And then, once you rinse them with water for a couple times, strain it out and then dry it on paper. I prefer like more like a paper bag than a paper towel because it's a little bit more firmer, and sometimes the seeds will stick too much to the paper towel. But you can use cardboard boxes, they work great. Newspaper is decent. So there's all kinds of plants to save seed, and it's actually pretty complicated. So this is just kind of a beginner class. I got this table from the SiliconValleySeeds.org, so you can look that up. And every little plant has their own, their own little cycle. Is it an annual or a biennial? Are they pollinated, self-pollinated, or cross-pollinated? What type of thing pollinates them? And then isolation, we'll talk about that in a minute. And then the seed longevity, how long does the seed last? So you can see in this table, most of them say 2 to 3 years. Seeds can be saved for a really, really long time, but if you're a commercial grower, you might not want to mess around with saving them for a long time and having poor germination. If you're a poor master gardener and you don't have a lot of money, then I would just save the seeds and try to plant them, maybe do a little germination test, and see if they grow. Usually at least a couple of them will grow. So you might just have to plant 3 seeds per hole instead of 1 seed per hole. And then just some notes here. So a lot of information out there. I won't be going through all of it today. But I'm going to talk a minute about other wet seeds. So this is a picture of me here on the right with eggplant seeds. So when I worked at the University of Hawaii, we were saving heirloom seeds from the Hamasaki eggplant, and it was one to be known to grow well in Hawaii. And then we would sell or give away the seeds from the UH Seed Lab. So other wet seeds are peppers, eggplant, squashes, melons, cucumbers, papaya, passion fruit. And just the way these fruits grow, it's like a wet, fleshy fruit and the seeds are inside. So generally the technique is to scrape out the seeds with the pulp or without the pulp and put them in water to clean them off, to wash them off, and then dry them. So cross-pollination is when you have pollen transferred from one flower to another. You guys studied male versus female flowers. And this can happen by wind, insects, or humans. In this picture here is one of the squash, yellow squash plants in our demonstration garden. And you can see that the female flowers, have a kind of swollen base. That's the baby fruit. Whereas the male flowers are just, the stem coming up to the flower with no baby fruit at the bottom. So squash is something that I sometimes hand pollinate. You'll get maybe a lot more male flowers than female. So when I grow the Seminole pumpkins and I finally find a female flower, I want to make sure that gets pollinated so I can get lots of pumpkins. But then isolation is, if you don't want this to naturally happen by bees and insects, you have to prevent cross pollination. And this is important for something like peppers, where you don't want to mix hot peppers and sweet peppers, or if you want to get the variety the same. So here's an example of an isolation tent where you just put it around your plant, and that way you can control the pollination and it's not cross-pollinating with any other plants. And these are available at the seedsavers.org. Here's like an example of a commercial isolation cage. And here they're putting the cage, the netting over the whole plot. And then some of them use these little bee boxes, and they'll attach a little bee box to each of the tents separately. That way the bees can go and pollinate, cross pollinate all the plants within that block. So you could be growing hot peppers in the first cage and sweet peppers in the second cage, and you don't have to worry about them getting mixed up. So that's a pretty neat technique. So I'm going to talk about papaya seed saving now. So this is something I grow a lot of. Papayas just do really well for me. And so I've been saving the seed and sending it out to all my friends on Facebook groups. If you want any, then send me an email and I have plenty more to send out to people. So, you go to eat the papaya, you cut the fruit in half and you scoop out the seeds. Everybody does that like normal, but if you are saving the seeds from it, you want to minimize the pulp that comes off with the seed. So the way you do that is just use the spoon and be very gentle and try to scrape off all the little black seeds without getting all this orange pulpy stuff. And then after you get the seeds out, put them either in the water or in a paper towel, and then you can scrape out the rest of the pulp so you can eat it. And so you can do the fermenting method like with the tomato for papayas, but I usually just end up putting them onto newspaper and kind of rubbing them into the newspaper to get rid of that gel seed coating. That seems to work. I'll use a couple different sheets of newspaper actually. So I don't rinse my papaya seeds. I just kind of put them on here with the minimizing the pulp. And this is the first sheet of newspaper that I'll put it on, and I'll just kind of roll them around and try to get the pulpy stuff off. And then I'll move it over to the next sheet of newspaper. That way it helps to clean up, get rid of this pulpy stuff. And then I'll throw that old newspaper in my worm bin. And so it takes about 1 week to dry, and it's good to keep moving them around and changing the paper a couple times just to help them dry off and clean any of that pulpy residue off of them. And voila, here we have the finished papaya seeds, nice and dry, no seed coating, in a little tray. So then I can put these, I just keep them in a sandwich baggie and label them. And you don't want to save them for too long. You want to replant them every couple years. That way they will stay fresh and then save more seeds, because they don't have that long of a shelf life. A lot of tropical fruits have kind of short shelf life for their seeds. So here's a jalapeno pepper seed that I'm saving. You ever forget to harvest the jalapenos and they get a little old and wrinkly and turn red? So that's really great for seed saving. You do want to wear gloves with these spicy peppers because they are hot, especially where the seeds have the heat, and you don't want to rub your eyes or other body parts after handling these. So allow the peppers to fully ripen till they're red, and then scoop out the seeds onto paper. These might be a good idea to wash them off in a little bit of water just to get that wee little bit of pulp off of the seeds, but it's not necessary. You can kind of rub it into the paper too to get the pulp off. So it just depends what you want to do. If you have a nice strainer, you could rinse them off a little bit, and then you let them dry. Again, like maybe move them around a little bit, to get the pulp off to help them dry. And if there's any small or immature seeds, discard those. And seeds take about a week to dry. So I just leave them, on my kitchen counter and move them around once a day. And then again, you can store them to plant later. So Seminole pumpkin is another thing that I like to save seeds from. I did a Facebook video about Seminole pumpkin seed saving. And so this one, most of the squashes, I do like to give them a little water bath because they're just kind of a little messy. So I pull them out, usually by hand or with a spoon, into a dish of water, and I'll just give them a little water bath, and then I'll pull them out and I'll put them on a sheet of paper. The pumpkin seeds, they usually float in the water, and that's okay, whereas the tomato seeds will sink. And so again, a couple more seed saving tips. This chart is from homegrownfun.com. And this just lists some popular annual vegetables and fruits with easy to save seeds, beans, cantaloupe, and every crop will have its own little tips. Like beans, let the pods age on the vine until they turn brown. Or you can pull up the entire plant, when the seeds are pretty much ripe, and just hang it down or hang it upside down. And then it says pole beans are more likely to cross than bush beans. So that's something to know, all these little hints. But depending on how much you get into it, then if you're a commercial, you need to pay more attention to the cross pollination in isolation. But if you're just saving seeds at home to just have some more plants, it's not that big of a deal. So lastly, we're going to talk about storing seeds. They do like to be stored in an airtight container. First, you want to dry them thoroughly, just to get the moisture down, maybe like 10 to 20% moisture. And then label and date what it is. That way, if you have 2 packs of Seminole pumpkin, you'll be like, oh, these are from 2017. These are from 2019. I'm going to use these seeds first. Cool, dark location. Most houses are fine. Keep it out of the sun. In the fridge is okay. I personally don't like to put mine in the fridge, but you can, some people have a whole extra fridge dedicated to seed saving. Be careful in the freezer because sometimes the temperature is too cold for some types of seeds. So that's where you would want to look into the details. But usually it's not necessary to freeze your seeds and can kill them in some cases. And then seed storing life, there's a EDIS publication about this you can check out. That's where this table is from, the seed storage life. So in general, short-lived seeds include onion, corn, okra, parsnips, like medium-lived, beans, carrots, peas, tomatoes, long-lived seeds, cucumber, radish, eggplant, squash, and but they can live for a long time. So this is just general guidelines. Lettuce is also kind of short-lived. So this is the longest living seed ever right here. It is a Judean date palm that grew from a 2,000-year-old seed. So whenever people tell, oh, seeds just live for a year or two, yeah, that is true, but they can live for a really, really, really long time under the right conditions. So that's, you can prove people otherwise and be like, nah, this seed was 2,000 years old. And it's planted in Israel now. The palm is about like 10 or 20 feet tall. So that, I think that's really cool. I learned that on Wikipedia. And we're not going to get into it today, but other ways to propagate, seed saving is one method, but like this turmeric pictured here, this grows from an underground stem, technically known as a rhizome. So you can plant, from tubers, rhizomes, runners, cuttings, and there's a lot of other ways to propagate plants. And so that concludes my presentation for today, and I'll take any questions, and be sure to visit our Facebook group for the latest and greatest, what's going on in the Florida Friendly program. Do we have any questions, John?
Yeah, you got quite a few on here. Okay, the first one I've got here from Nancy McGill is, what is happening genetically when a hybrid seed reverts? Please elaborate.
I like to use the example of like the mule. It's like you cross a horse and a donkey and you get a mule. So the mule can't turn back into a horse or a donkey. It's just a mule. And sometimes they're sterile, or they're not, they can't perpetuate their own offspring. So they will revert in that case because they still have the genes from the parents.
Okay. All right, let's see here. From Andrea Carter, what about crushing them? Well, I guess this was about some of the seeds. What about crushing them with a spoon or against the side of a colander? I don't know which one that's in reference to. If it's the
maybe the
she says the papaya.
Yeah. Yeah, there are a lot of techniques that you can use for the papaya. You just don't want to actually crush the seed. You just want to get that gel seed coating off of it. So I find just like pushing it with my thumb against the piece of paper works pretty good. I've tried to kind of use a spoon to crush them in a colander, but they're a little slippery, so that didn't work so well for me. But if you come up with the latest and greatest way to do it, please let me know.
And I got one. Yeah, Andrea says thank you. One from Dina here. When's the best time to collect eggplant seeds?
The eggplant, like you want to let it over ripen. And so if you're growing like a black beauty, like the purple eggplant, then eventually it will start to turn like yellowish or brownish. And that's when it starts to turn that yellow. That's when you want to collect the seeds out of there.
Okay. All right. Well, if anybody else has some questions, you can go
I
ahead and
do.
unmute.
Dina has another one about eggplant.
Sure.
When I prepare the eggplant, I salt it, and then, of course, I rinse it, and lots and lots and lots of seeds fall out. Can I dry those seeds and use those seeds?
Yeah, that sounds fine.
Okay, thanks. All
Yeah,
right,
just
good.
keep the salt off them a little bit.
Oh,
Or
yeah, you have to rinse them, but yeah, okay, good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Eggplant's a little tricky because it's so fleshy and the seeds are really tucked in the flesh.
Yeah.
When I was at UH, one method we tried was just kind of putting the whole eggplant in a blender with like a bunch of water and trying to like chop it up a little bit so some of those seeds would get released. But that didn't work super well, but
Well, I have white eggplant, and I find the seeds just sort of fall out, especially when I rinse them
yeah.
after being salted. So if anybody would like some white eggplant, let me
Oh, you
know.
got seeds? Great.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Very cool.
All right. Any other questions, folks? I guess I've got one about the tomatoes, like
Mhm.
in the like how long do you typically let them ferment for if you go with that method? Have you tried
Yeah.
that?
I usually do the ferment method on the tomatoes because that gel, inhibits germination and it's kind of a pain to get off because they're so small otherwise. So, like 1 to 3 days, maybe 2 days, you'll see visually, very easy to tell that the seed coat will float to the top and the seed will sink to the bottom of the jar. And that's how you know they're ready.
Cool. Are there I mean, just off the top, what else could you try and ferment like the tomatoes?
Like the papaya seeds.
Papaya? Okay.
Anything that has like that gel seed coating, you can ferment that off.
Okay. Well, cool. Um all right, folks. Well, I guess if there's no further questions, we'll go ahead and wrap up here. Um
Yeah, sounds good. And you guys know where to reach me, T Silvasy at uf.edu. And I don't know if John gave you guys the memo. They're talking about taking away our county emails. So we just use our UF emails, but our county emails will be around for some time now. So don't worry about it.
yeah, we'll let the people with the higher salaries figure that out, but we'll keep you all notified. But yeah, I guess outside of that, I guess we can just go to all member stuff. I really don't have a whole lot to say right now. I think the biggest thing with regard to these lunch and learns is that we'll probably just move to having lunch and learn once a month from here on out. I think this was good, like with the beginning of the COVID pandemic. Uh, I mean, just to have some extra stuff going on, especially with lockdown. But now that we're months into this thing here, and maybe we can see the end of the tunnel, I think we need to just like refocus on moving back to normal a little bit. And then I've got classes starting as well for the new class in January. So I don't want to be spread too thin. And then what I think I'm going to do is kind of resurrect something down the road from what Ed used to do, I believe, like that he would have a advanced master gardener training like once a month in addition to the lunch and learn. So I think those would be actually pretty similar to what we did 2 weeks ago with me and Juliana. Uh, Basically just try and test your guys' skill, see where, and I'll take note. I'll do a little survey or something and see what you guys want to learn about as well. And try and beef up your skills whatever topics you guys want to cover at that point. But I was thinking about trying to do that closer to March or April once I get through my first online class here. Um, but outside of that, anyone else have anything else to say? I think we're good. Well, I guess go ahead and just put down 45 minutes today for continuing education. And I don't think we need to put anything for volunteer service, but thank you all for being here. I hope you guys learned something new. And I look forward to seeing you guys in a couple of weeks here when we've got I think his name's Rick Wells from and he'll talk to us about Florida Automated Weather Network from University of Florida IFAS. But hope you guys enjoy your turkey tomorrow or turkey alternatives, whatever you're into. And I'll catch you all in a couple weeks. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, John. Nice to see everybody. We're having tofurkey.
Tofurkey?
Vegetarian turkey, tofurkey.
Oh, you're not going to do the turducken?
No, I never had that one.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you again, Tia. And yeah, I'll have to see about having you and some of the other agents on here some more down the road. But yeah, I'll catch you later here. All right, everybody. That's my cue to head out. Take care.
Bye, everybody.